Nathan, my husband, and I chose to return to one of the most meaningful places in our relationship journey, the restaurant where we had our first date. He created a little surprise by reserving a table at the garden table, the exact spot we sat at back then. A sense of hope suddenly rose in me that maybe things would get better, that he truly wanted to mend what was broken between us. But everything turned upside down when his mother, Clara, suddenly walked into the restaurant and loudly asked, "Why wasn't I invited?" The whole room fell silent and all eyes turned to us. I sat there, completely confused and unsure how to respond. I am Nathan's wife. We've been together for 7 years. Our love story began in a simple yet unexpected way. We met through a group of mutual friends. At first, it was just innocent greetings, but then friendship blossomed and gradually turned into a deep love. I remember that first night we laughed together, and Nathan said, "You make everything brighter." And I felt a strong belief that he was the one who would walk with me to the end of the road. We got married after 2 years of dating, just 2 years, but we both knew we had matured and were ready to build a future together. I remember those long nights by candlelight when Nathan gently held my hand and whispered, "What do you think if we build a home filled with laughter, where every hardship is just a challenge we'll overcome together?" That was a sweet promise, like seeds of faith planted in the soul, promising that we would always be together no matter how life turned out, whether it brought us joy or sorrow. At first, our marriage was like a beautiful painting with warm and vibrant colors. Nathan, with his gentle smile and always warm hands, seemed to know how to make each day more meaningful for me. He took care of me in every little way, from simple breakfast full of care to listening attentively to the smallest stories I shared after long, tiring days. "Don't worry, I'll handle everything," he would often say, as if those words were a steady shelter shielding me from life's storms. Because of those words, I often told myself how lucky I was to have a warm and thoughtful husband like Nathan, someone I believed would always be by my side no matter what happened. As time passed, we built sweet memories together: weekend picnics by the lake, cozy evenings under warm yellow lights, and endless conversations where we dreamed about a bright future. In those moments, I felt complete happiness and a firm belief that our little family would always be a peaceful haven amidst the chaos of life. But then, within that painting began to appear shadows, not from external challenges, but from within, from my mother-in-law, Clara. Gradually, like a dark cloud creeping into our bright picture of love, Clara showed up with cold glances and unforgiving remarks. Each word, each gesture from her slowly eroded my trust and built invisible walls, making our married life no longer as whole as it once was. While Nathan always quietly protected me, Clara, from the sidelines, silently constructed those invisible barriers to divide us, as if I were just an outsider, someone unworthy of entering the home they had built before I came. Those tender memories slowly faded in the cold atmosphere of judgment and silence, leaving behind a silent pain within me. And even though I once believed in the dream of a happy home, the bitter reality of life made me realize that love isn't always strong enough to overcome the invisible walls built from someone else's heart. Clara is a strong and decisive woman, appearing like a cold mist from the very first meeting. The moment she stepped into the room, her eyes scrutinized every detail of me, from the way I dressed, the hairstyle I chose, even the way I smiled. I couldn't help but wonder, is she just trying to protect her son, or did she already judge and reject me from the start? At our very first meeting, while Nathan smiled proudly beside me, Clara silently looked me up and down, then lowered her voice and said coldly, "I thought you'd be wearing something more elegant." I forced a smile and replied, "I prefer a simpler style. Do you think that's okay?" But in that look, I felt a coldness that could never be warmed. Despite my best efforts to fit in, Clara never stopped criticizing, even the smallest things, from how I arranged the table to the accessories I chose. Each word felt like a tiny needle tearing through me, leaving a deep imprint that, to her, I had never been enough. And to me, that feeling, quiet but persistent, made me constantly feel like a stranger, never truly welcomed. Every time we met, she had sarcastic remarks, no matter how minor. I remember once, I excitedly wore a simple dress that I really loved. While Nathan complimented my understated beauty, Clara simply curled her lips coldly and said, You should take more care with your appearance. Her words felt like a knife to the heart, leaving me with the sense that I was never good enough. It didn't stop there. Every time I let my hair flow naturally, Clara would remind me in a condescending tone, "You shouldn't always wear your hair like that. It's not really appropriate." She never gave me the chance to explain or express my own style. Everything was compared to the women she deemed worthy of being her son's wife. Even when I tried to cook or take care of small things around the house, she never hesitated to throw sharp comparisons like, "Do you think this house would be any worse off without you?" A question that broke my heart and made me doubt myself. I tried, really tried, to the point where sweat dripped from my forehead as I worked to blend into their family life. I tried to listen to advice, adjust my style, and even change how I behaved just to prove I deserved to be a part of Nathan's family. But every time I thought I was getting closer to being accepted, I felt trapped in an invisible cage with no way out. That feeling overwhelmed me every time Clara shot me a judging glance or softly mocked me with, "Can you try a little harder?" As if no matter how much I tried, I was still just a ghost on the outside of their world. I am Nathan's legal wife, the person who has given him all of my soul, with all its joys and sorrows. And yet, despite sharing everything, I could never seem to enter his family's world, a world quietly but cruelly ruled by Clara. That loneliness, the sense of being excluded to the point of feeling like a lost stranger, has etched itself deeply into my mind, leaving a wound that refuses to heal. I poured my heart into trying to build a harmonious relationship with my mother-in-law, Clara, even though every effort I made felt like raindrops falling on parched earth, leaving no trace behind. I remember the evenings after dinner, when the whole family sat together, and I gently said, "I just hope to be part of this family, to build a warm home with Nathan." But my words always seemed smothered by Clara's coldness. She never said anything directly, but every comment, every scrutinizing glance, made me feel like I didn't belong there. In moments like those, I never dared to rebel, never dared to resist or put up any walls that could further upset Nathan's family. I always told myself, "I just want peace. I just want to show him and his mother that I'm not the enemy." What hurt more than anything was Nathan's silence. Instead of standing up and saying, "You deserve to be respected," he would repeat, "My mom just wants what's best for you," as if that was the only excuse needed for all her behavior. He would say it during quiet moments after dinner, but also repeat it in front of others, as if trying to soothe the wound caused by Clara's words. "That's just how it is. She wants what's best for the family," he'd say, his voice smooth but unable to hide the detachment and indifference. Every word from Nathan felt like a blow, soft but cold, making me feel even more alone and abandoned. The way Nathan always let his mother overpower everything made me feel like a silent ghost, standing outside their lives. I had chosen to stay with him for 7 years, sharing countless joys and sorrows. But in the moments when I needed protection the most, he would only stay silent and step aside for Clara. I felt like I was slowly fading away, becoming an outsider, as if those happy moments with his family had only ever been a faint illusion. In the silence of that house, I asked myself whether I would ever see the light of acceptance, or if I would forever remain a drifting shadow, always left behind in a storm of words and actions lacking in love. The evening at the garden table arrived, promising a new chapter of healing for our love. Nathan had asked me to return to the place where we had our very first date, where sweet memories still lingered in every corner of the space. I thought tonight would be a quiet melody, a moment where we could talk, resolve our conflicts, and reclaim the warmth we once had. But not long after we walked in, everything turned upside down. I remember vividly the moment the restaurant door opened and Clara appeared. Every conversation, the clinking of silverware on plates, suddenly came to a halt, as if time had stopped. All eyes turned to us, as though they were waiting for a play to begin. Clara stood there, her face tense with anger and authority, as if she were the center of the entire space. Before she could even settle into the atmosphere, she threw out a heavy question. Why wasn't I invited? That question struck like a cold slap, making my heart tighten, and I couldn't get a word out. In that moment, the warm atmosphere of the restaurant turned heavy, tense like a tightly strung violin string ready to snap. Everyone around fell silent. Only the sound of restrained breathing and curious, judgmental stares remained. But what hurt me the most wasn't Clara's words. It was how Nathan, the man I had trusted and loved for 7 years, reacted. Instead of standing up for me, instead of saying something to make me feel protected, Nathan quietly pulled out a chair for his mother and said, as if everything was perfectly normal, "It's okay, Mom. Have a seat." That sentence echoed like the sound of a public betrayal. In that moment, I felt myself disappear, as though I were nothing more than a quiet ghost standing outside of Nathan and his mother's lives, an invisible person left behind. Everything around me seemed to sink into silence, while I sat there, heart heavy with confusion and pain. I couldn't believe that on a night meant to be ours, Nathan didn't utter a single word in my defense, letting Clara dominate the space freely, as if I didn't exist at all. The feeling of being pushed aside, something I had silently endured for so long, now became even clearer and deeper. I felt like I was losing an irreplaceable part of myself, my trust, my dignity, and the love I had once poured into this marriage. In the thickened air of the restaurant, beneath twinkling lights and fading laughter, I realized how loneliness was tightening its grip on me, pulling me deeper into the very marriage I had once dreamed of. At that moment, I lost all sense of direction. Every second that passed felt like a crushing weight, as if the whole world were pressing down on me with no escape. Clara's icy voice kept echoing in my head like shards of glass that could never be pieced back together, leaving behind a heartache that refused to fade. Meanwhile, Nathan, the man I had trusted, the one I had given my heart and all my hopes to, acted so indifferently, as if nothing had happened, as if my tears and pain were nothing more than specks of dust in his eyes. My heart shattered between Clara's provoking words and Nathan's passive behavior, and I realized this was not the relationship I had dreamed of. That feeling of being dismissed, disregarded like an invisible ghost, built up in my chest until I couldn't bear it any longer. My eyes stung, as if being wrung dry, but I held in the pain, refusing to let the tears fall. I stood up, each step heavy as if carrying 100 years of sorrow. In that moment, I lifted my head, looked Nathan straight in the eyes with an icy, unwavering stare. I was choking back tears, but in the weight of my breath, I could no longer suppress the storm inside. In the tense silence, I spoke, not to create more drama, but simply to release the pain that had long built up. "If your mother matters more than I do, then this marriage has no meaning." Those words rang out like thunder in the sky, cutting through everything around me. They were like a line drawn in the sand, paralyzing the space. I turned to Nathan, his face filled with shock, like a painting frozen in silence. He didn't react or say anything, just stood there, as if too stunned to comprehend what was happening. But in that moment, I no longer cared for explanations or pleading looks. I only knew that I had finally said everything I had buried inside, and now, even if the world were to fall apart, I would no longer listen to the voice of betrayal or tolerate the ridicule any longer. I turned my back, not once looking behind me, and slowly walked out of the restaurant as if each step was tearing my heart apart. "I can't stay any longer," I whispered to myself, my voice trembling but filled with resolve. The entire space around me seemed to shatter, voices, laughter, all faded into distant echoes, leaving behind only the storm of pain inside my chest. "It's over," I told myself, and I didn't look back, regardless of the curious gazes following me or the heavy silence of judgment in the air. The cold suburbs of the night opened up a new horizon for me. "I'd like a taxi, please," I softly but decisively spoke into the phone. The chill felt like a thin sheet of ice covering every strand of my hair, every piece of my soul. And yet, that coldness was also a strange strength, a small glimmer of light in the darkness of loneliness. I headed to the home of a close friend, the only person I trusted not to judge me or make my pain feel worse. "Can I stay here for a while?" I whispered through the phone. Tears had started to rise, but I held them back, not wanting to hinder my own steps forward. In the days that followed, I didn't return to Nathan's house. I didn't know whether what I did was right or wrong, but deep in my heart, one truth remained. I could no longer live in a relationship where my husband's protection was just a hollow illusion. I can't live with a man who never stands up for me, who always puts his mother above my heart. I told myself during countless sleepless nights, caught in an endless storm of chaotic thoughts. And then, after a long struggle with loneliness and uncertainty, I returned. The old wedding boutique, the fading memories, all began to resurface in the somber air of separation. When I walked in, I saw Nathan standing there, as if waiting for something, his face visibly stunned, as though he had just realized he was the one at fault. Do you, do you have something to say? Nathan asked softly, his voice wavering. In his eyes, I saw confusion, regret, as if he thought I was the one who had made a mistake. He rushed to apologize. I didn't know how to handle it. I just wanted to keep peace at home, didn't want to create conflict. My mom, sometimes you understand, right? He said with a shaky voice, struggling to justify himself. But within me, the tears that had been held back for so long, the quiet sighs of pain, refused to be soothed. I felt only coldness and disgust rising up, and there was no longer any way to hide the disappointment. I lifted my head, my eyes as cold as ice, and spoke bluntly. You've already made your choice. You chose your mother over me. Those words echoed like thunder, silencing all of Nathan's excuses. No further explanations were needed. I had made up my mind. This was the moment I had to walk away, to save myself from this nightmare. In that moment, amid deafening silence and looks of disappointment, I knew I had broken free from the unfair chains that had bound me, stepping forward into a new chapter of life. I resolved never again to accept betrayal or domination from anyone. Those declarations rang out like fireworks of freedom, turning the space into a heavy, breathless silence where no one dared say another word. In that instant, I realized I had lived too long waiting for support from someone, or even from a whole system, that perhaps never knew how to stand by me. I didn't cry, didn't scream. I simply stood up in silence. My eyes, once full of tears, now brimmed only with determination. It's time I live for myself. I began making small but meaningful changes. I separated our finances, changed all my passwords, carefully sorted every important document, and gradually outlined a clear plan for life after divorce. In my mind echoed the words, no longer bound by illusions of protection or fading promises. I will live for myself because I am worth it. Soon after, I met with a lawyer, the one person I could trust to help me gather every piece of evidence about what had happened. I started keeping records of every receipt, every item I had paid for myself, hoping to uncover the truth behind the lies. Slowly, a staggering reality began to unfold. Nathan had been secretly transferring money to his mother, Clara, without ever telling me a word. I'm not just dealing with a weak husband, I told myself, my inner voice filled with sorrow and rage. I'm dealing with an entire toxic system, one where control and abuse of power are embedded deep within the family. The lies, the secret money transfers, and Clara's shadow silently creeping into every corner of our home, all of it had merged into a cruel picture I could no longer accept. I knew that, in order to save myself, I had to sever every toxic tie and start over, free to be myself, no longer dimmed by anyone else. What hurt me the most was the final moment I had to face Nathan, the moment when all the deception, betrayal, and injustice were ruthlessly laid bare. Nathan handed me a piece of paper, a thin sheet, yet heavy enough to carry the weight of an entire world, asking me to transfer ownership of the apartment we had built together. In that moment, every sweet memory, every sacrifice I had made for our home felt like it was being crushed, as if I were losing the very core of myself. Nathan tried to ease the tension, speaking with a trembling voice. This is just a way to make things easier so we can move forward. But in my mind, those words howled like a storm wind, and each piece of the past tore into my heart. I stared at that paper. Each word felt like a sharp blade cutting through the independence and freedom I had built with my own hands through years of effort and sweat. It wasn't just a home. It was a symbol of trust, of relentless effort to create a place I could truly call mine. I choked up, feeling every heartbeat thud like the collapse of an entire world. I couldn't accept losing everything that had shaped who I was. I won't let this happen, I told myself, my voice filled with unwavering determination and immense sorrow. I rejected the offer, leaving Nathan and those complicit in that system with a silence full of blame and refusal. After that incident, I made the decisive choice to walk away from that hollow relationship. I signed the divorce papers, officially marking the end of a bitter chapter. 3 grueling months of conversations, meetings with lawyers, and sleepless nights passed, But eventually, I found a new place to live, a bright, peaceful space with no trace of Clara's shadow or Nathan's indifference. That place became a mirror reflecting my rebirth, a memory that marked the beginning of rebuilding life on my own terms. Now, I truly feel free. No longer do I live under the scrutiny of those who never accepted me. No longer do I feel like a prisoner in a relationship where love was just a fading illusion, a mist that never quite took shape. Every morning, I wake with a new spirit. Deep, restful sleep has returned, as though my whole body has been released from the burden that once crushed me. I laugh out loud, sincerely, as if each smile is a victory, a testament to my existence. More importantly, I am now truly free, free to live in my own way, free to love myself without waiting for anyone's approval or recognition. It's as if I've broken free from the chains of the past, slowly gathering the scattered pieces of myself and rediscovering the passions I had once abandoned in the chaos of life. I began diving back into old dreams, old joys that once gave me life, from painting, traveling, to writing, even trying my hand again at the sports I once loved. Each new day, I set small but meaningful goals for myself. I learned to make time just for me, savoring each moment like a symphony of freedom and joy. I told myself, today, I will do something I've always wanted. I will live fully in each moment. And step by step, I began writing new pages in the story of my life. These pages do not just mark the end of a chapter filled with bitterness and pain, but open the beginning of a whole new story, one where I am the creative author, the one who chooses her own path. I remember the mornings when sunlight peeked through the window, and I woke up with excitement for the new life ahead. I dared to dream again, and I was determined to make those dreams real, from reaching out to the world to enrolling in new classes, meeting people who shared the same passions. Believe in yourself, I whispered every time I felt alone. This freedom is not just physical liberation, it's the release of the soul, as all the old chains have crumbled, making way for a new power, the power of self-determination, and the courage to build the life I truly want. In this new world, I am no longer bound by false illusions or baseless promises that once hurt me. I live in a way that I choose. Each step forward is a declaration of independence and freedom. I've learned to love myself fully, without needing validation from others, because the most precious thing is believing in myself. With every passing day, I laugh out loud, live each moment to the fullest, as if I finally found my true self, a strong, free woman who will never again be constrained by the past or by unnecessary attachments. I feel liberated. No longer do I live under prying eyes or invisible control. Now, I sleep peacefully, laugh wholeheartedly, and live a life that doesn't require anyone's permission for me to simply be myself.